Good morning to everybody. Good luck. A wonderful brand new week to begin to continue really our journey through Sefer Kesser Shem Tov, some incredible teachings that we have this morning. So we begin with Kuf Mem. And the Baal Shem Tov says like this, Kasav Baal Shem Tov says the Baal Shem Zechron Levracha, Zchus Yagan Leina Masha Kasav Arizal. This that the Arizal writes, which a lot of the Chevra already learned this in Torah Yud Aleph, Shahalacha Rosh Tevos Hariu LaHashem Kol Haaretz. What does this mean that halacha is Rosh Tevos Hariu LaHashem Kol Haaretz? Let the whole earth Hariu, like trumpet out or call out to Hashem, to the divine. So what does that mean? He says, halacha zu tzarich l'shaber kol ha'artzius v'chamrius. In order to access halacha properly, that halacha of course doesn't mean law. Halacha means to walk, to journey, to progress, to proceed, to travel, right? To change, to transform. That's what the idea of halacha is. You need l'shaber. Morning. Kol. There's a chair right there. L'shaber kol ha'artzius v'chamrius. The idea is the shattering of all artzius, earthliness, v'chumrius, and corporality, physicality.
What's the difference?
I don't know, but for now, let's, I think, learn it. I'll be just literary use of the words. Artzius v'chumrius, physicality, corporeality. V'nasan lanu menaseh aleph, shua Yetzer Hara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a tester, a challenger, and that's the Yetzer Hara l'naseisenu, to challenge us. Just like we test a child to see what does he know, how well did he learn it in school, right? To test the halacha. It's a very beautiful thing. I guess Shmuel came home with his Divrei Torah booklet because it was the last Shabbos of the whole year. So he thought it would be interesting to flip through it, and he said, "Stop!" And we asked him questions on previous parashas, because that's, you see the real retention of knowledge. It's incredible, really incredible. So you're able to test. And then he says, what do we do? So we ask like a tricky sort of question. But when we recognize that the Yetzer Hara, he's playing games with us, but he's trying to get us to give an answer. He's not trying to confuse us. Right? Sometimes the child feels like, what do you do? The parent is just stop torturing me or asking a riddle. It's not, right? Meaning, why would the parent be asking a question in that way? Because we assume that the child can handle it. The child knows. He says the Yetzer Hara is really, B'Pnimius wants us to do Ratzon Hashem. Really, the Yetzer Hara, Rabbi Nachman calls the Yetzer Hara in Torah Ayin Beis. In Likutei Moharan, Rabbi Nachman refers to the Yetzer Hara as a Malach Kadosh Mamash. It's a holy angel. A holy angel. There's no idea in Yiddishkeit. It's a terribly Christian concept of like a fallen angel, like Satan. There's no such idea in Yiddishkeit. The Satan, the Malach HaMaves, the Yetzer Hara, is Mamish, one of the team. Anybody who knows me a little bit knows that my favorite seret in the world, I know what the hashkafa is in the house, is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the original version, Gene Wilder, it's the classic, right? And so they deviated from the book a little bit because it was my favorite book growing up also, and they add in different things in the film that they don't have in the book. And one of the things in the film, which is sort of hinted to in the book a little bit, but it doesn't become the main plot, but in the movie it's like the main plot, is that there's this guy Slugworth or these other rival chocolate makers that are trying to capitalize on this deal that Willy Wonka has to invite people into the factory by having them work as agents essentially, to go in to steal recipes, to steal samples, and then they'll decode them and reverse engineer them, and they'll be able to create the same thing, right? And so essentially this is how it goes. And the different kids are all sneaking different things, and then they all get in trouble, and they're all nasty kids, and not that any kid is nasty, but they have terrible behavior, and they get all, one way or another, they have some kind of terrible consequence. This one turns into a blueberry, this one turns, like the story, right? And then at the very, very end, the only one that's left is Charlie. And again, this is not in the book. This is Stevie as the second girsa. So in the script of the film, essentially in the very end, just out of curiosity, raise your hand if you've ever seen the film. Yeah, so you'll have some knowledge at least. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the original. Okay, good. So you'll know what I'm talking about. So at the very, very end, Willy Wonka gets very angry with the buckets. I mean, with the two buckets, Charlie and his grandpa Joe. And he gets very angry with them because they stole some of the fizzy drink, which is also not something that happens in the book. So they restructure the whole thing. And he whips out this whole contract, and it unfolds, and it's like tiny little letters. And it's like, there's no way they could have ever known, that Sachakol, what they do? They had a little, and they lose all their lifetime supply of chocolate, which is devastating for them because presumably that was all they were really going to eat for the rest of their lives because they don't have any other food. And Grandpa Joe is very angry. He's not having any of it, and he sort of storms out. And Charlie, at one point, took like the most incredible creation. What was it called? The hobgopper, the snozzler, something like this. The everlasting gobstopper. That's what it is. And he stole it, and he has it in his pocket. And he has every reason in the world, to leave and to give it to Slugworth. It's like, this guy's a nasty person. He's cheating a little boy out of his lifetime supply of chocolate. And at the very, very end, he turns around, and Grandpa Joe's, where are you going? And he goes back into the room, and Willy Wonka's sitting by that desk, and he puts it on the table. And then the music starts, and there's like a very famous line. So that Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka says, "So shines a good deed in a weary world." Right? So deep. So shines a good deed in a weary world, because he didn't have to do that. And he did it. And I'm sure he had every kind of Yetzer Hara, despite him. I'm not taking this. This sample I'm not going to give over to the rival. And, and then the whole scene, he goes, "You won, my boy, you won, and this. And he's dancing around the room, so he doesn't know what's going on. And all of a sudden the door opens, and out comes Slugworth. In the factory. In the inner sanctum of the factory. It's all a mushal, you understand? Out comes, I'm regaling you with the script. Out comes Slugworth. And he's so confused. What's he doing here? He says, this is, he says, "Meet Mr." whatever. He gives him a different name. He says, "That's not he, that's Slugworth." He says, no, Slugworth. He was working for me the whole time. He was working for me the whole time. The whole thing was a setup. The whole thing was a test. The whole thing was a test to find out who's going to inherit the chocolate factory, who has the character to be able to lead the factory. And when you're watching this, it's just, you can switch out all the characters, right? And obviously Willy Wonka, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is Kiviyachal. That's the architect of the factory, which is this world. And Slugworth is the Satan. And there comes a day where you just open your eyes, like, no, there was no Satan. What's Satan? What Yetzer Hara? What struggle? He worked for me. He was working for me the whole time. So the Yetzer Hara, says the Baal Shem HaKadosh, is just a Manasseh. He's just the one who is sent to challenge, but he's not a rival to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He works for God. When we are wise and we're able to see through the scam of the whole process, and we recognize the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which absolutely saturates every strata of reality, including those base, lower drives, tendencies, etc. This brings tremendous tainuk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if you want to take the mashal further, we said in the end of Torah Vav, Adam hayoshev ala kisei, says Rabbi Nachman. We already started with Adam, right? Ashreinu dayenu mamish. Adam is Klal Yisrael, that are asid to inherit the whole world. So we're going to be the ones on Judgment Day sitting on the kisei, not Hashem. That's Rabbi Nachman as a radical thing. There's a merging of Klal Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which we already know from the Zohar Kodesh, Yisrael v'ayraisa v'kudesh baruch hu chadu. We don't really know what this means. We are one with God. We are separated off in some sense, in some illusory realm which we experience, for the purpose of reinforcing that connection. Because the gap emerges, as Rav Nosson explains in Likutei Halachos Hilchos Ariv Gimel, required reading. We'll learn it together one day, Be'ezus Hashem, if we don't get to it first. Hilchos Ariv, Halacha Gimel. So Rav Nosson says the whole purpose of the creation of the world was to create an illusory gap between one chelik of Hashem, which is the Ein Sof, right? Hashem as Hashem, from the standpoint of which there is nothing else, right? Because that's Hashem's perspective, and our perspective, which we're not God, and we can't control anything, and we are down here in this world of limit and lack and tzimtzum and constriction, and why is there a gap? Says the Rav Nosson, for the sake of yearning, to produce what's called the shashua, this back and forth, this ebb and flow, this movement within the divine kiviyachol. That in order for movement, there needs to be distinction, point A, point B. And there's the revelation of these 2 points that are still within the divine, but the 2 points cannot experience themselves as such, meaning in that experience as the same, otherwise the whole thing collapses. So we are limited in our mindset, and we perceive ourselves as being separate people, which is the biggest joke. Like, I have a name. None of us will have names. But we won't have our own individual concepts. We'll just see each other. Sparks of God. Sparks of God. But there's that experience is unfolded to allow for this back and forth. Which the whole secret of life is this back and forth. It's also called the Midas, Chesed to Gevura, and then Tiferes, then Netzach, Hod, and then Yisod. The whole aspect of dialectic is opposites, dichotomies, polarities. Shashua, Gesundheitsstärke. That's what the Zohar Kodesh says, and all the tzaddikim echo this Tainuk Tmidi Eina Tainuk. Because constant delight is not delight. There needs to be this Aliyah, Yerida. Back to the Aliyah. Back to the Yerida. Back to the Aliyah. And hopefully it's higher and higher forms. Into the light and into the darkness. Back to the light. This is creation. This is life. So Hashem has tainuk gadol from this. Kamashal ben nechbad v'charetz, like a sweet, sharp child. Sheyesh la'aviv tainuk k'sha'ireyach v'naseu u'makshe. Right, the father has a lot of delight when they're the father is hosting a guest in the house, and the guest is like testing the kids, and the father's sitting there has tremendous delight. And in an unhealthy circumstance, the kid feels like threatened or in some way like someone's doing something bad, like why are you challenging me, asking me questions? But if the kid has seichel, he understands the person's not trying to make him feel bad. No, it's just they want to help him and express his capability, what he's capable of, and to show the kid how smart he is, to show the kid what he knows. Huh?
You mentioned the back and forth. I mean, is there an element where one should try to, as it were, not push too hard for the aliyah, so that the reader won't be sort of keep things on?
No. That's already chachmas. Tmimus upshitas. With all of Hasidus and Pnimis Torah, the most important principle is authenticity and simplicity, right? Because once you start to pop the hood on reality, it becomes possible to start being sophisticated and start manipulating things. And the whole thing of the Baal Shem Tov was, like the Sefer Yetzer Hara says, Imratz libcha shuv le'echad. Sefer Yetzer Hara says, I'm about to open up for you all of reality. You might get lost in the details, shuv le'echad. Right away, if you see that happening, return to simplicity. Return to simplicity. So I've said this many times now, about ha'omer echta v'ashuv. It doesn't work. You can't school the system. So we don't have to try to limit our aliyahs, for fear of the next yerida, nor chas v'shalom do we have to go seeking yeridas for the next aliyah. Life gives us plenty of opportunities, unwittingly, despite our best efforts, to have yeridas, and that's life. That's what it means to be human, That's not really in our capacity to control. Otherwise we'd be angels, but we're not angels. So that's life. That's life. But authenticity is the main thing. Okay, that's that teaching. Ashkach. And I think that we can free up another chair. Yeah, Ashkach. Thank you guys. Says the Heilig of Hashem in the next teaching. again, so just to finish up, sheyesh la'aviv tainug k'shayriach menaseu Mevakshei v'haben ein maniach esatzvul linatzeach, and the child doesn't allow himself to be overcome, right? He realizes what's going on, and he's menatzeach. Okay, so we move to the next teaching. It's a very short teaching on the pasuk Srafim Oimdim Mimaloi. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has Srafim Oimdim Mimaloi in his Mimal, in his heavenly abode. Says the tzaddik Pirish, what the pasuk means, Srafim Oimdim Hema Tzadikim. These Srafim are talking about the tzaddikim Shaboyer Belibam Abbas Haboyer, that their heart is filled, is lit up. You know, Abbas Hashem is not, in Chassidus, not something you have to have yir and have Ava. It's what you are. It's what you experience. It's not like you acquire it. It's a visceral feeling, like an almost physical feeling of ava, like a burning up. Shaboyer belivam avas haboyre, and they're called srafim. Because what does the word saraf, right, means? Like an angel, even in English, S-A-R-A-P-H, right? It's a saraf, right? It's like an angel. But what does it mean? Where did the word saraf comes from? From the word nisraf, right? Or srifa, means to burn. So the tzaddikim are called srafim because they're on fire. They're on fire with the love of Hashem, like a deepest yearning and pining and longing. I'll get into this now, but there's a teaching from the Rebbe Rashab, very important teaching, that teaches that there are two kinds of Avos Hashem. One is related to fire, one is related to water. He says fire is the aspect of like thirst, simaon, because a person, like fire is dry, like a desert is hot, makes a person parched, very thirsty, and a person's yearning for something that they don't have. That's the aspect of what's called Yichudat Tata, where the concept of Yichudat Tata is the realization that this reality exists. I'm down here, the Ein Sof is up there, and there's this incredible yearning to get there, right? But there's a here and a there. But then there's something what the Rabbi Rashab calls, based on that Tanya, and the later Prakim calls Ava B'Tanugim. Ava B'Tanugim means the love of delight. And he says that's Mayim. Right? That's how it's called Sameh L'chula Mayim. So Al Pi Pshat, everybody learns Mayim, a Mayim ala Torah, which is true, but what kind of Torah? How it's called Sameh. If a Jew is feeling that thirst, that yearning, because we perceive ourselves to be here and we perceive God to be there, L'chula Mayim, go to what's called the Yehudi Ilah, which is the realization that actually Ein Oid Movadai, and there's no distance at all. In Rabbi Nachman, we would call this Ratzeh V'Shayv. Right? Torah Vav. Ratzeh means running, right? Which, like, because the shirish of the word is rutz, right? And that word rutz is also the shirish for the word ratzon. Means desire, but you cannot have desire without lack, right? Because what are you going to desire? Right? Desire implies that something is missing that you do not have, right? Or you have it, but it's too far away. Distance makes the heart grow fonder, right? There's rutzah in there. That's the b'china of rutzah, and in that place, yes, like we learned in Torah Vav, the Malachim are asking, right? That's the aspect of im esak shemayim. Even if I rise to the heavens, shamata, you're still distant, and that's an aspect that we can toggle between that. So it's like a video game, like first-person player, or like you can be in the person, or you can be watching the person. These are all mishalim. Hashem is giving us with technology the ability, not that everybody should now be immersing themselves in that. I'm speaking a lot about entertainment today, but obviously everything has to be a balance. But there's a parabolic value, so to speak. There's a parable there that we have that I think previous generations couldn't quite grasp. Like, what would it mean? Like, what do you mean we can toggle between two reality? And we know it because we can visually experience it. If you put on VR goggles and you're playing a racing game, and you can, but with the press of an arrow, you can flip from like a bird's eye perspective, and then flip the toggle, and you're in the face of the guy who's driving the car. It's incredible. It's incredible. The whole thing of Hasidus, now again, for you and me living in 2025, we know this because I could give Mishalim for it. Imagine how Rizal trying to explain these concepts to a person who didn't. What does it mean? Yichud Ilah, Yichud Tata. Like, how can you switch between perspectives? How can two things be true at the same time? How can it be that there's a realm in which all there is determinism, and there's also a realm in which all there is free choice? Like, how? What are you talking about, Rav Tzaddik, when you say both things are true, each one is in its own place? How? Our generation could understand this. Our generation can understand this. So says the Rebbe Rashab, when you toggle back in to Yichud Ilah, which is the godly perspective, that actually everything is already in Mavadai, that's called Ava B'Tanugim. Your thirst is quenched. And you have to have both. You have to have both. Rabbi Nachman would say, which we're going to learn together, Yetzer Hashem and Torah, Zion in the second volume, maybe in a few years from now, hopefully in Yerushalayim, and hopefully with the same chevra. So I always say those same things. Number one, we should continue to learn the Likutei Moharan that we're learning. Two, I shouldn't be somewhere else and you're still here that we're learning on Zoom. And three, we shouldn't be here together. So the only way that can happen, Be'ezras Hashem, is if all of us are back in Yerushalayim learning it together in person, Be'ezras Hashem B'Karev. Right. But we're going to learn over there that you have to have these two hasagas at the very same time. This is what the Zohar Kadosh would call the Jewish heart, having two sides, that one side is always dancing and one side is always crying. Both at the same time. You can never move too far into one without also maintaining your connection to the other. And that's true for both. That's what it is to be a Jew. Hazorim bedima, berina yiksairu. Al pi pshat means those who plant with tears will reap with joy. But the Hasidic Rebbes would read it, Hazorim bedima berina, kama, yiksairu. People who plant with tears and with joy and with tears, yiksairu. That's how you reap. So
I think
what were those words again? Yes, something like that. Something like that. Although that is a little bit more, it's less balanced, right? Because beliboy would be internal and panav would be external. I don't know. I mean, there is an aspect of that, but it has to be both. It has to be really both. Bipnimius. It has to be both. So that's what it means, a saraf, right? That's avas Hashem, ava b'tanugim, ava b'tzimon, both. So how did the tzaddikim get to that level? Why is it strafim aimdim? How is it that the tzaddikim are so established in their service of God? And the answer is ma'al loy, because they realize that chelek alikam imal is in them. Strafim aimdim. You want to know how the tzaddikim reach their level to become burning with love for Hashem? Because mima'al, they have the chelek alikam imal loy inside of them. A person should know Shema, a ma shalamala is mimcha, it's in you. One line from the Baal Shem Tov, but that's the whole Yiddishkeit. Srafim aimdim. How do we get our children, our students, how do we get people to burn, with fire for Hashem? We have to teach them mimal, because of who they are, what they have inside of them. Okay, take a look at the next teaching. This is 142. This is, I would call, maybe, again, each teaching is so central, but this is like for sure a fundamental central teaching from the Baal Shem Tov. And the Heilige Baal Shem comments on the Gemara in Sukkot Chav Chesam and Aleph. The Gemara tells us davar gadol v'davar katan. The Gemara makes reference to a great thing and a small thing. Says the Gemara, davar gadol is Maaseh Merkavah. A great thing is referring to Maaseh Merkavah, to Kabbalah, to the secrets of the divine chariot. Davar katan, the small thing, is Havayos Abai v'Rava. Is the halachic determinations and Talmudic hermeneutics of Abai v'Rava, the shakla v'tarya of working out the parameters of the different halachos, and that's called a small thing. Kabbalah is called a big thing. Halacha is called a small thing. Says the Baal Shem Tov, how could that be? Who would refer to Havayos Abai v'Rava? It's the essence of our tradition. It's Torah Shabbat Pat. You would say, that's a small thing. Chas v'shalom. Chas v'shalom. Havayos Abai v'Rava. Ki ikar taraseinu anemar b'Sinai. So it's beautiful in relative terms, whatever you want to say. Baal Tanya has a very, very long piece on this in Igeres HaKodesh, going through what this means and what it doesn't mean. But how can you say that that's davar katan? Listen to this, Chaver, listen to this, because this is the core of the Baal Shem Tov. People don't understand this, they don't understand anything else. Listen to this. Alahachi Perusha Ba'emes. This is the true explanation, or you could put the comment in a different place. Alahachi Perusha. Be'emes hein Torah niglas hein anistaris hakol sug aleph. He says all of Torah, both nigla and nistar, is the same quality. It's the same. There's no higher, there's no lower. But the bottom line is, with what consciousness is a person engaging with the nistar and the nigla alike? If he's just fascinated to know, and it's studied like any other subject, chas v'shalom, that person will not gain anything from their learning. Whatever it is that the person engages with, it'll be like the fringes of the field, like it's nothing. It'll kitzitz asada. But if his kavana is that what I want is a relationship with Hashem, I don't care for my own kavod, I'm not sitting for my own knowledge, that I should be a big intellectual or a big Talmid Chacham. It's a terrible thing, I think. We raise our children that they should become Talmidei Chachamim. And no, 1,000 times no. That is not the goal. Halavai, they should know lots of Torah. They should be Yarei Shamayim. That's how we should bless our children. Become Yarei Shamayim, become authentic Jews, become holy people, become refined people, become deep, sensitive, compassionate people. That's the goal. Then dveikos, that should be anashim that are medubak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Maaseh Merkavah, that they want to become a little chariot for the chelik al-kamimal that they have. That they recognize that as being primary, and they carry that lovingly with all of their thoughts, words, and actions, because they know who they are, and in perspective, they're able to understand what the rest of themselves are supposed to be. That's what we should want for our kids. Not that they should be able to say the fanciest, pshetel, and dazzle the whole shiur and the top bacher because they're the biggest lamdin. It's terrible. Mamish terrible. It really is. That's the opposite of what Torah study is all about. It should become a vehicle for dveikus. How are you going to do that? Through the Torah and the mitzvahs. Hein al yedei Torah niglas, hein al yedei Torah nistaris. Whether we're learning nigla or whether we're learning nistar. No matter whether he's learning halacha, daf yomi, whatever it is that a person's learning Mishnah Berurah, or a person's learning pnimius haTorah, in both, one's concepts should be, like the Tanya explains in Parak Daled, Parak Hey, dveikus with Hashem. This is Hashem's, this is what God's interested in. It's like my poor wife, right? She's not so interested in Hasidus like I am. But because she loves me, she indulges me, and we sit, and she listens to all my pshetlach and all my stuff, and she maybe pretends she's interested in some way, and I think that she is interested. But because, not because she loves the topic per se, but because she loves me. And so then there's a and so it's the same thing with Hashem. Maybe I'm not so interested in Baba Basra and the sugyas of Bar Mechza and all these different things. Maybe it doesn't interest me. But this is God's shashua. Like we say, chazu banei chavivai. Right? That they go away, they v'shtakchen b'tzar delon, v'askin b'ched v'sadi li. So this is what I'm interested in. This is my will. This is my ratzon. Even if you're not going to figure out in year 9 or year 10 what relevance two people fighting over a talis, a case that b'chal never happened ever and never will happen in that way, and all the different halachas, how that's relevant to my life. Hopefully a good Rebbe will be able to show how those principles actually manifest in actual real applied principle in din even today with just many disputes, civil disputes. But aside from that, like the Baal Tanya says, even if there will never be, the Tanya says this explicitly, he says there will never be a Ruvain that says Taina A. Wherever you want to come up with a Taina, on any area of halacha, there will never be a Shimon that has another Taina. Never happened, never will happen. Says the Baal Tanya, it does not matter. Kivan Sharatzan Hashem hu, because it's the will of God that Lu Yitzur, there was someone called Ruvain who would say this, and Lu Yitzur, there was someone Shimon who would claim that the halacha would be this. In that minute, you've taken the totality of the infinite and you've brought him into your brain. And the way the Baal Tanya expresses this, as there's a yichud gamor, on that moment between your machshava and Hashem's machshava, famous words from the Tanya, that there is no such yichud in the olam hagashmi klal ve'ikr, that two things that are separate should be so unified, his words are mikol sadupina. That there's no distinction where you can point to that and say that's this and that's that. But they're still two different things. But they're totally ensconced one in the other. Once I'd have thought that perhaps this is the symbol of the Aron, that Aron noise es noisav. So you can't see who's carrying who, because the Aron is the Torah. Right? The Aron has the luchos in it. You see? Noise es noisav. It's but the ikr is to become Merkavah. Now it just so happens to be, which is why I rail onward and onward and onward, like I did yesterday and many other times about learning Hasidus, is because the only way that there's any hope of a person ever learning Nikla in this way is by learning Pnimius. Because it's in teachings like this that we are availed the information that it's even possible to learn Nikla in that way. So that's why we have to learn, but not that Pnimius, we should learn Pnimius and not learn anything Achas v'Shalom. We have the whole Torah to learn. But the point is that if a person learns Pnimius, they will then be able to go back into their daf and learn it with Dveikus. They're going to go back into their Shnai Mikra Targum. They're going to learn Rashi on a pasuk in Keles, right? And it's going to be Dveikus. Mamish. It's going to be, wow, this is Hashem's word. That's the goal. So look how the Baal Shem Tov reads this. This is a classic. V'zeh shekasav. This is a classic. Davar katan havayos dabai v'rava. Says the Baal Shem Tov. And you want to know, this is Chasidus. It's so hard to explain it. You have to just experience it, you know. And even then, once you experience it, you can't really put your finger on it. What did the Baal Shem Tov say that was different from the Vilna Gaon or anybody else? Like, what is Chasidus? It's impossible to describe in words. Listen to this. This is Chasidus, okay? This is what it means. Davar katan havayos dabai v'rava. Ratzalaymar mishaloymed lachtoid uletainug. Someone who learns Havayos dabai v'rava stam as Havayos dabai v'rava, meaning information on a page, that's going to give them the ability usually to be very proud of themselves and consider themselves a big lamdin or talmid chacham. Letainug, for their own pleasure. V'tzarech atzmai, and for himself. Hu davar katan. That's what it means. Meaning, it's not the material. It's if you're only learning Havayos dabai v'rava as Havayos dabai v'rava, and that's what it is for you. That's called davar katan. Pirush ha'oived Hashem is baruch b'davar katan. That's serving God with a very low and constricted consciousnness. Okay, and it's like nothing. It's like Chas v'Shalom sitting and learning geometry or physics or something else. A person not who's learning Maaseh Merkavah, it's not talking about Kabbalah. It's the same Havayos dabai v'rava. But this time he's learning it to become a chariot to Hashem. That's what it means, Maaseh Merkavah. Not Kabbalah. You understand? It's not a different subject. It's the same subject. But Bechlal it's different, because this is what Hasidus does. It gives you different glasses to look at the same thing, but it's Bechlal a different color, and everything changes, but nothing changed, but everything changed. Everything changed. It's the same content. It's the same Havayos dabai v'rava. But now we can accurately refer to it as Maaseh Merkavah, because he's learning that same content to become a chariot for Hashem. Hu davar gadol. That's the davar gadol. That's what it means to serve Hashem with an expanded consciousness. That's what it means to be a Geula D'Kiyid. V'zeu davar gadol Maaseh Merkavah. That's what it means. Ratzalaymar lasis atzmai Merkavah. Maaseh Merkavah. I want to turn myself. Maaseh la'asot et atzmo lemerkavah la'Hashem yisbarach al yedei haTorah. Is that not a classic? It's unbelievable, right? This is basically, I would say, like I said before, it's not just a central. I would say perhaps it's the central inyan of Hasidus, because what the Baal Shem Tov really wanted underneath all of the various implications of this consciousness is Hashem. Hashem, Hashem, Hashem. Focused on God, God-centric Judaism, relationship-centric Judaism. Everything else is seen through that lens. To the Baal Shem Tov, that is the only thing. That's the only thing. Everything else is a means toward the end. There are no other ends in Judaism. The only end is Dveikus. Everything else is a means toward that end. And to the extent that we turn anything else into the end, it's idolatry. including Liban Torah, absolute idolatry. Because if it's divorced from what the point of this is, then it's sheni b'le'echad, then it's already something else. So according to the Baal Shem Tov, we have to keep all of Yiddishkeit the way that it is. Every last sif katan in Mishnah Berurah, every last pilpul in Shev Shmaitza, and in the Ksais, every last marsha, every last halacha and agada, all of it, with all of the mitzvahs and everything else, it has to be what it is. But we have to shift in the perspective with which we approach, and the concepts and the perception with which we approach those things. When we do that, then Havayos Tavai B'Rava become Maaseh Merkavah. And by the way, I should say, when this will close, that the flip side is also true. A person can be learning actual Maaseh Merkavah. Everybody knows that, like scholars of Kabbalah, and some of them are really good. Like I'll read their books, like they have very, very interesting and true things to say. The Mekubalim would consult with Sholem and the rest of the Chevra because they really did the work. They went through the ancient texts, they corrected different manuscripts. There was value in their work. But without Shmir's Torah mitzvahs, that's not called Maaseh Merkavah. That's a davar katan. You could be learning Zar Kadosh, Pardes Rimainim, Shmana Sha'arim, Shar Gulim, Sefer Yetzira, Sefer Abbahir, Vidavils. You would pick any Kabbalistic text. You could sit and learn there. You're not a Mekubal now. A person can be learning even the greatest concepts in a way that's katan, because if we divorce humility from it, meaning if we divorce the whole purpose of this exercise being that I become smaller and thereby Hashem becomes bigger to me, then it's a davar katan. Hashem should bless us to be great Jews. Yidin Gedolim, Jews who are davuk to Hashem, Jews who keep the main thing, and then when we do that, the implications of that shift are immense. There's almost no area of Jewish life that fundamental, like sort of primordial shift won't have implications. In education, certainly, in parenting, in relationships, in our experience at work, in our experience at home, in every single aspect of life is going to be shifted once we bring Hashem back into the picture. Hashem should bless us to do that in our own lives and to help the whole klal do that so that we can bring the world closer and closer to the Gula Shlema B'Karv V'Yameinu. Amen. Thank you very much.
Mevakshei Hashem Yismach lei Mevakshei Hashem Yivridai Rayo